Hello and welcome to the 2022 State of the City speech for the City of Cupertino. My name is Mayor Darcy Paul and I'll be providing the remarks today. Today is January 29th. It's the last Saturday in January. And as we typically have it, the State of the City speech is usually on the last Wednesday in January. And so I'm already a few days late. But what we were trying to do as the COVID pandemic seemed to be tapering down a little bit a few weeks ago was to have an outdoor event to invite several people from various agencies to table and to be able to have people mingle within, of course, acceptable pandemic, hopefully winding down parameters. But then, of course, what ended up happening was that Omicron hit, and so unfortunately, we weren't able to have a live event with larger number of people congregating. But I did want to make sure that we have a timely State of the City speech. And so thank you for joining us here today. Hopefully this will be broadcast in the week following. We're on a Saturday. A few of our esteemed members of the community still agreed to come out here. So thank you very much for being here to have this half-hour conversation with us today. And I promise we'll keep it short and sweet for Cupertino's 2022 State of the City because we're all very fatigued from the last couple of years. And speaking of the last couple of years, we've, in Cupertino, done a fairly good job of responding to the pandemic. From the very outset, Cupertino was the forerunner among all the cities in Santa Clara County saying that we had to have emergency ordinances relating to PPE, relating to masking up. And so what we've done is we've carried forward those practices throughout the entirety of the pandemic. We're so fortunate to have good partners all along the political spectrum in that regard. So I can say with full forthrightness and accuracy that our representatives on the county level have really delivered for us as well, our County Department of Public Health, as well as our elected representatives. And I'll say a few words about my fellow council members here. Vice Mayor Chow has been on the City Council since 2018, and she and I have worked tirelessly to try to get our various commissions and committees into lockstep with each other with regard to the work plan. Many other contributions made by our Vice Mayor over time. Councilmember Willie, one very brief anecdote I'd like to share about Councilmember Willie is that one day he called me and he said, there's an office building available near City Hall. Instead of spending $70 million on a new City Hall, why don't we actually do a capital expansion of our real estate, get the space, and then be able to solve this issue with office space for our employees in City Hall for a fraction of that cost. And we did end up purchasing that space on 10455 Torrey Avenue. Councilmember Moore has joined us since 2020, and Councilmember Moore has been tremendous in so many ways, very great meticulousness and attention to detail, but with regard to environmental issues, I have to say that Councilmember Moore has been very, very protective of the public and very much wanting to make sure that we do things that are correct and proper and that we keep our environment clean. And then finally, Councilmember Way, also joining us in 2020 in the City of Cupertino's council. Councilmember Way has really been an excellent, as promised, and delivering the ability to have a more cohesive discussion that is indeed harmonious. I sit on the Valley Transportation Authority Board with both our supervisor, Joe Simidian, as well as Supervisor Cindy Chavez. And I have to tell you that even though there might be some differing viewpoints represented by that spectrum of a couple of our supervisors on the 5-supervisor board, it was really enlightening and refreshing to see how well the supervisors are able to work together, especially in this kind of a situation where we have a worldwide pandemic and we needed to respond critically, quickly, focused, and in a thought-out manner that was comprehensive with regard to all of our outreach to the various cities. And so I'll tell you, I'm so proud of Santa Clara County and of Cupertino for responding in that manner. Supervisor Chavez was holding weekly meetings with all of the electeds in the area ever since the beginning of the pandemic. And then when the vaccines did come out about a year ago, we actually had Supervisor Simidian come here and host a series of his forums that he did throughout his jurisdictions. And so I'm just really happy to see that we've successfully dovetailed into good practices in Cupertino. So I'm convinced that's why we see the situation that we have today, which is basically the pandemic is still going on, absolutely true. But we in Santa Clara County have managed to do a good job in the response. And in Cupertino, you see people outside most of the time with masks, but at the same time, we're being very careful about how we reopen as well. So in this kind of situation, of course, we're outdoors. So I thank everyone for being here, and we're able to congregate and not have the masks on. And as it stands right now, it looks like the Omicron numbers are going down. Not quite precipitously down, as you see in some places, but of course in some places those vaccination rates are relatively low compared to Santa Clara County and Cupertino. So with regard to that, I also wanted to make a quick mention of what else Cupertino has done extremely well over the years. I remember when I was elected in 2014, at the end of 2014, shortly thereafter, we actually had an agenda item come forward in front of us talking about pavement management of all things. And so it was actually at that time, the then City Council had the foresight to see, okay, this is an investment that makes a lot of sense. And that I think it really encapsulates the good parts of what people think of as the Cupertino way. Think about things that, are in a situation where perhaps we have some opportunity and, we can help, parts of the economy. And so that started a 7-year journey into what we have today. And just as of a couple of months ago, interestingly enough, and you might have seen the article in the Mercury News or one of the local publications, Cupertino was rated as having the highest pavement condition index in the entirety of the Bay Area. We're talking about all 100 jurisdictions. And over time, you've actually seen that PCI number raise over these past 7 years. And really, the inception of that was precisely then, when we had someone say to us, hey, look, there's an opportunity here. It may be quite a bit of funding, but at the same time, we had the foresight to be able to deliver that. And I will say that every single council since then has kept up with that support and that funding when those decisions were there to be made. So, I think that lays a kind of a nice anecdotal foundation for, what we're doing well and the kinds of approaches that we need to keep on taking. And it's very kind of similar to how we have approached the pandemic and we've worked with our partners. At this time, what I'd really like to do is, kind of take us through a number of various topics. But I also want to visit upon the fact that we had some significant personnel decisions that we were making last year. And so with regard to those personnel decisions, what I will say is that I think have reached a real stability point in Cupertino now. So we now have a permanent city manager as well as a permanent city attorney. I'll be introducing our new city manager first. And so when we're looking at these types of opportunities, whether they be in the sector of development, environmental stewardship, drought response, whether it's talking about things in the community such as how we interrelate with other parts of the world, with the sister cities, how we talk about our local economy, how we talk about education, other parts of planning, our families, the history that we have. Every single one of those items, I think, really needs someone at the helm of our employee staff that has a good sense of how to put those various parts into order. And so we were so very pleased in Cupertino to be able to identify and hire Jim Troop from, I want to say Paso Robles, but actually Jim came most recently from Lompoc. And so Jim has a number of years of experience as a city manager. For me, more saliently, he has a lot of experience in utilities. And so when I look at some of the things that a municipality does, utilities are really high up on the list, because if you have that wherewithal for utility management, then you actually have a lot of options ahead of you as a jurisdiction. But before I go further into those topics, let me have Jim come up and speak. I will socially distance off to the side. Here's Jim Troop.
Hi. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that intro. So I am Jim Troop, It's a weird spelling on the last name, but just call me Jim. I am very honored to be here. It was a long process, lots of different interviews to go through, and I know there was a good competition, so I like to think that I rose to the top. So real quick background, I don't want to bore you too long, is I'm a born and raised Californian. Those are rare sometimes these days, but it was down in the South County, so down in Orange County. Told everybody it was right by Disneyland, so if you were coming in, you just look for the Matterhorn, you found us. Let's see, what else? We have been married for 30 years, no, over 30 years. 4 kids, 3 of them are out of the house. Last one's in the last year of college, so we're like, oh, so close to empty nesters. I love my kids though, but it'll be fun. Professionally, as the mayor said, I have a little over 35 years of experience, both in the public sector and the private sector. I started in the private, and then I got pulled into the public, and that's where my heart really lies. Family issues, my parents and aunts, uncles, grandparents were all in the school districts and whatnot. So that was something I really liked, and out of the time I've spent, almost all of it has been in finance and budget, accounting, all that good stuff, the boring stuff, others say. During that period of time, though, I did transition over, and as the mayor said, I just was recently the city manager for the city of Lompoc, which is down Central Coast, just north of Santa Barbara. I think we did a lot of good work down there. It's set to really just excel now. And then coming up here, like I said, I was excited. I didn't know if I was going to get it or not. But one thing I did find out after that transition was the types of questions that were asked in the interviews. This council's very involved. They want to do everything they can. They're really providing a huge service. A lot of their time and effort goes into the city, and that means a lot when you have that kind of council that wants to be part of the working. The other one I've seen in my 1 month, I hit 1 month yesterday, and the amount of outcome and good outcome from the residents and the business community has been tremendous. They all want to come in, they have ideas, they want to offer their help. So you got the council, you got the community, and the last piece, now that I've gotten around to almost everybody in the city, is that the fact that we have a dedicated staff here. So the directors, department heads, all the way down to the line staff are dedicated to do whatever they can to make it a better community. So you got 3 pieces of the pie. That's what you need to make it a successful city. And as the mayor said, we're headed in that direction, and I'll just leave it at that for now. But call me, text me, email me. I'd love to talk to you and find out more about the city. So I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks so much, Jim. And I'm sure that everyone can see this is a super friendly person, and I think that we have an immediate fit with the temperament of Cupertino. I would be remiss if I said, well, we are all doing our jobs and we know that absolutely 100% fantastic. This is really a transition, right? Ultimately, there are a lot of things going on here, and we want to take the 6 to 9 months. But the nice thing about that is that I actually have about 10 months left on council because I'm termed out. The nice thing about being able to take that 7 years of experience is to be able to think about that transition. And so when I look at Jim hitting the ground running and really having that kind of enthusiasm and passion for the work, I feel really good about our prospects going forward. You might have seen the wrist kind of things on the quarterbacks in the NFL. I have one of these right here, so you might see we kind of like looking at this. I got a list of topics, although they're not plays. So I'll talk briefly about utilities. So Jim does have significant utility experience, and when I look at the utilities, I realize that we actually have an opportunity in the space of water. Cupertino is serviced essentially by 3 different water structures. We've got Cal Water basically in the north, and towards the south we've got San Jose Water. But San Jose Water has its own pipes, and it also has the Monte Vista pipes that it leases from us. So what we've tried to do as a city council is encourage as much as possible our staff to present viable options to us. So we don't necessarily want a lot of time to go by and not necessarily have the option potentially of saying, if we want to take these pipes in-house, is there that possibility? And so that's really that prime time, that prime opportunity here. But I think we're also looking forward to being able to look at utilities in the energy space, for instance, because, of course, We initiated Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority a few years ago from Santa Clara County. Cupertino played a pivotal part. I stand right now on the corner of Community Hall and the library. Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority actually was, boarded, so to speak, out of our community hall for a couple of years before they found their permanent space in Sunnyvale. But at the same time, when you look at the energy equation, that is going to be an enormous component of everything that we're doing in the future. So for Cupertino to be now looking at potentially the water utility and all the benefits that come with that, because at the end of the day, you end up having, potentially it's a lot of work. It is truly a lot of work. We hear from Santa Clara, they say, hey, look, it's a lot of work, it may not be worth it. But actually, to have that conversation in a copacetic manner, to know that, look, we're trying to expand the pie and just run things well. I think that, hopefully is the message that comes across. With regard to other parts of the community that our residents value, I'm just so pleased today to be able to have a couple of educators here among our crowd of 15. And so we actually have the ability to reach out to our residents and say things like, hey, you know what? A couple of years ago, we're gonna have to go remote. And it was something that was essential and was done, of course, across the entirety of the nation. But I think that when you look at the ability for our community to make those adjustments, it was something that people basically realized. I won't say universally, but collectively realized this absolutely has to happen. Are we having those conversations along the way where people are pushing, back and saying, well, look, we need to have live in-person instruction? Absolutely, we're having those conversations. And I think that we need to welcome those conversations, but at the same time, what we can do is try to adjust the tenor of those conversations so that we're still having those meaningful points that are, put across, and at the same time, coming to a resolution. Not everyone's going to be happy all the time, but at least we'll go forward, and I think the collective wisdom will ultimately prevail. So, my kids are here today. I'm really happy that they were able to, like a lot of all of our kids really, to take Zoom school for, the better part of an academic year. So on behalf of all of our students and parents, we thank you for, doing everything that you could do. My wife Sharon's here, and so of course, we had a lot of remote, work. And so we had work at home, we also had school at home, and so it was really something that was tremendous. So Satish, as president of the board of CUSD, the Cupertino Union School District, as well as Jiajing, the assistant principal of West Valley Elementary, really appreciate you being here today to help welcome us in. And I hope you all don't mind if I kind of call out names, just to thank you all for being here. We do have Gary Kremen, our board president from the Santa Clara Valley Water District, as well as Yoriko Kishimoto, the board president of the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District here today. Originally, they had both agreed to table for us, for the public, and I hope that we can bring people back during the course of the year for something like our volunteer fair, for instance, where people are really wanting to see what opportunities are out there as we come back and intermingle. So thank you for being here. We're going to keep on working together, Yoriko, with regard to environmental stewardship. As everyone knows, the issue of the environment is one that not only is near and dear to the hearts of Cupertino, but it's something that tremendously affects everyone worldwide right now. But more specifically, we've had conversations cross-jurisdictionally more recently about various options for environmental measures that could have some positive collaborative outcomes. And so when I say that, I really want to make sure that everyone understands that this is really a matter of a conversation. This is a conversation that cuts across the entire board. Nothing needs to be not out in the open. And so when I look at an issue such as for example the cement factory or development, and this is something that I've communicated to people recently, there are two sides of one coin that I've seen in the past that we really need to focus on. One side of that coin is to make sure that that people are acting, how do I say it? People are acting diligently, okay? Because at the end of the day, if we do our homework, there's a lot of these various moving parts. And so I'm not really so worried around here. Obviously, this area, knows how to get stuff done. But the other side of it, as I've progressed, over the course of the last 7 or 8 years on council, what I realize is that you can get a lot more done when you look at the other side of the coin, and that's the trust component, right? As you're making these relationships over time, you're able to bring forth, certain ideas because of the trust factor. And so I actually communicated this to our large developer of the old Valco Mall just this past week. City Manager Troop and I actually went out to the site, and we had a conversation with a few of the principals. And I said, look, at the end of the day, no one can guarantee automatic entitlements, or this issue will be taken care of, or this X, Y, and Z will be absolutely done in your favor. But we can guarantee a good conversation. And if we look at a coin that basically has trust on one side and diligence on the other side, and we keep up with the diligence and we work on that trust factor, then I am confident if you look at Cupertino's recent entitlements, you've got the Oaks Shopping Center, which is now the Westport project. You've got Beta Brothers on Foothill Expressway. You have Stevens Canyon Crossing. We had such great community conversations about each of those developments. There were improvements done over the course of time as we were having those public comments and conversations. My hope is that we can really focus on those two particular things, keep things open, and thereby, have that much better results just all across the board. So, thank you very much to the community as well for, when we're talking about environmental stewardship, having broad-based support for my own initiative. I have a Mayor's Cup challenge coming up, and that'll be the inaugural challenge. We're focusing on the topic of single-use plastics. And so the idea is creating a public forum, and I've been trying to tie that to the opening of our library expansion, which is right behind us here inside the library. Beautiful space. As I've written in my first published Mayor's Corner a couple of weeks ago, we're kind of held up by supply chain issues, by the very large nano wall that'll open up into the courtyard to the space. But I'm trying to tie that event to the opening of the library expansion. So what'll end up happening is that, hopefully sometime in March, we'll have this event where we can talk about the issue of disposable plastics. We can talk about it from an industry standpoint, from the standpoint of science, and from the standpoint of policy. And I'm hoping that we can create a template for having these types of community discussions in the future for all sorts of different topics. So, hopefully, stand by for that. Economic development opportunities. I wanted to make sure that when we look at Cupertino's various commissions and committees, and they do tremendous things. We have a representative from one of those commissions, the Technology Information Communications Commission, Prabir Mohanty, here today. Prabir, thank you for all your work over the course of time. But I've also noticed that TIC Commission works extremely well with our staff. You have a great IT point person in Bill Mitchell on our staff. But I've noticed that TIC really gets quite a bit done, and the conversations are good. So what I'd like to see is that kind of replication of relationship going forward in all of our various commissions. But what we do notice on council is that we actually have an economic development committee. We also have a fiscal strategic committee, and those are the two bodies that don't actually have charters in Cupertino. So they meet kind of willy-nilly ad hoc. And so what we're doing is we're bringing back a conversation with regard to what commissions and committees do we have, how can we refine them, and hopefully in March, sometime in the spring at least, we can apply a charter to this Economic Development Committee. My hope is that, and this is just my own opinion, I'm not going to say that I'm speaking on behalf of even another person on council, but my hope is that we can have a couple of council members, a member of our technology industry, a member of retail and restaurants, and a member of hospitality in there, and of course, with commission interviews for the committee, and just talk about how we are going to go and proceed and go forward with regard to the various types of economic challenges that we have. So with that in mind, I want to go ahead and, having introduced a number of the topics that we're going forward with, also introduce our other staff person that City Council hired last year, and that is the City Attorney. When we talk about trust and diligence, I really have a high degree of confidence in our City Attorney hire. Chris Jensen was someone that was brought on board in June in Cupertino, and from what I've seen in this half year, most certainly has the diligence, but also just speaks very clearly, speaks very honestly. And so with regard to being able to get a lot of things done in that sense, I think that trust is going to be engendered and amplified throughout the course of what will hopefully be Chris's and Jim's very long tenures here. So here's Chris Jensen.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the mayor for that kind introduction. So I've been here a little bit longer than Jim, but have gotten a chance to meet very few people in person. So it's nice to see some human faces here, and I hopefully over the course of the next year things will start to improve a bit more, and there'll be more opportunity for in-person and informal interaction. So, but this is a very nice start. So since Jim gave a few details about his personal life, I would be remiss if I didn't mention my family. I've been married for 22 years. I have one son, he's 16, sophomore in high school now, and we've been in San Francisco for over 20 years. Professionally, I came here from the city of Berkeley. I was the assistant city attorney there, had opportunity to work on a lot of land use issues, some real cutting edge issues around building electrification, and so I know that those are issues that are important to the community here, and so I'm hope that my experience will be able to serve you well. And then before that, I was actually in private practice for 14 years, and at a number of different law firms, and I left private practice because I was looking to do something that had a more direct, more immediate, more concrete impact for the communities where I was working. And I think city government, I certainly found that. I found that in Berkeley, and I've certainly found that here in Cupertino. One of the really nice things about this job is that, 1 minute you're working on really big statewide issues, high-profile matters, and the next minute you're helping, sort of residents and staff and the city council solve really the everyday problems that you need to do to help make a city run. And so that balance is really wonderful for me. I can say the other sort of great thing about this position is, the council made the decision to transition from a contract city attorney office to an in-house city attorney office. And I was lucky enough to be hired to fill that position. So I've really had a chance to build a team from the ground up, and I think it's a small but very effective team, and I think it meshes really well with the very effective staff that the dedicated council and commissioners that we have here, and I really hope that we can continue to provide legal support for them, and then of course support the community to accomplish its goals. So again, thanks to the mayor. Thank you for all for being here. It's really nice to meet you all in person.
Thanks, Chris. Well, I promised a half-hour state of the city, and I'm going to stick to that. But I want to let everyone know just here today that we have so much going on in Cupertino. I see Elisa Sakis here on behalf of the Toyokawa Sister City Committee. And I just know so much time goes into making sure that those 5-year delegations, are pulled off well. So much thought and care goes into thinking about, are we going to have a student delegation in 2022, or do we just go ahead and set aside this year and start planning for 2023, such as how they made that decision. The Cherry Blossom Festival will be happening this year. That is just one sector of the community. We have Jennifer Furlong here, the executive director of Cupertino Historical Society. And that's also a slice of Cupertino, but we've worked together on bringing Boris Stanley back, along with an exhibition on the early beginnings of Cupertino. We're talking about my recent Chinese Exclusion Act panel. I have amazing colleagues on council. Our former mayor, Stephen Scharf, is here today. And what I realized is that between Stephen and myself, we represent 5 years of the last mayors of Cupertino. So 2018, 19, 20 was Stephen, 21 was me, and then 22, of course, here again. And I want to make people comforted by the idea that yes, we can adhere to the idea of like this kind of rotational system, but when it's necessary and people have that appetite, it is kind of a vote of the body of the people that are there. And I think in terms of trying to provide that stability and the transition of our new staff members, I mean that in sincerity. I'm not looking to come back or change our charter or anything to become mayor for life, even though that I'm sure would be a very rewarding kind of thing. But at the same time, we just have so much going on. Ray Wang, thank you for chairing our planning commission for the last couple of years. So Johnny Lee is here from our Leopardor Bakery and restaurants and retail. Claudio Bono is going to be our chamber president this year and manages the Cupertino Hotel. And so we have so much to talk about. I appreciate Rod Deardan Jr. being here from Apple. There's just so much to talk about. I didn't talk about the various things that I'd really like to put forward today, such as having a retail master plan, reaching out to the community and talking about what we can be doing in terms of identifying the things that we'd like to see in town. But at the same time, we have all sorts of opportunities. I hope that we all stay safe. I hope that we keep on having these chances to talk together. I promise that in this kind of lengthy list I had that I wanted to talk about in half an hour and only got to about half, I promise that we will put forward those topics. I will have these types of events throughout the community. If they need to be virtual, they'll be virtual, and to get to the rest of them as well. Because that was a subset of what Cupertino was doing. So I just want to say in closing, to the public, to our residents, we are doing fantastically well here, but we can always be doing better. We are doing, I think, well vis-a-vis the outside world, but we can always be doing better. And so we will sincerely keep on doing that and communicating with everyone, hopefully working in partnership to be expanding that pie. So thank you so much. Have a great 2022, and we'll see you over the course of the year. Take care.